Imagine holding the absolute definitive key to solving the greatest architectural mystery on planet Earth, only to watch it crumble into fine dust right before your eyes. Every single day, an irreplaceable archive of human history is actively dissolving. For centuries, the world has argued over how the colossal pyramids of Egypt were truly constructed, but the answers were never hidden deep inside the dark burial chambers. They were etched onto the very surface of the monuments. Within the smooth, massive casing stones that once clad these structures, each block carries micro-evidence of precise tool marks, internal leverage physics, and installation alignment that could resolve the engineering debate forever. Yet, almost every pyramid has been aggressively stripped bare, and the precious remaining stones are degrading at a terrifying pace. We are living in the final historical window to survey this evidence before it vanishes into total oblivion. The survival of this mystery depends strictly on understanding a forgotten history of systemic thievery and unexpected mechanical destruction. Contrary to what modern scholars blindly assume, ancient looters rarely pulled massive blocks directly off the Fourth Dynasty giants. The true timeline of how these stones disappeared is far more recent, highly controversial, and directly tied to an ongoing battle against the elements that Egyptology is currently losing. The investigation into this structural decay begins at Saqqara with the earliest large monument, the step pyramid of Pharaoh Djoser. In recent decades, this iconic structure became the center of a fierce international controversy, following a massive state-led restoration campaign that radically altered its ancient exterior. For many, this aggressive intervention stripped the pyramid of its romantic, historic essence, replacing time-worn textures with heavily reconstructed modern blocks. While the project aimed to stabilize the core, it inadvertently obscured critical construction phases that were once visible to the naked eye. However, this controversial renovation accidentally yielded a groundbreaking scientific revelation regarding how ancient limestone self-destructs. Counterintuitively, the most severely damaged stones were not the ones exposed to the harsh desert winds and torrential rains. Instead, the catastrophic erosion was concentrated at the base, entirely buried beneath massive hills of the pyramid's own fallen debris. Official reports published recently confirmed a shocking chemical reality. The ancient limestone rubble actively traps destructive salt moisture deep within the structure. This trapped salt acts as a highly corrosive, hidden agent that chemically eats away at the pristine casing blocks from the inside out. Clearing this ancient debris was an urgent necessity to halt the chemical rot, proving that how a monument is covered entirely dictates its survival. Moving forward in the timeline of Pharaoh Snefru, the unique ruins of the Meidum Pyramid expose another massive historical misconception. At first glance, the fractured structure looks like a catastrophic engineering failure that collapsed during its original construction. However, the physical evidence completely shatters this myth. Ancient graffiti, discovered deep within the buried Eastern Temple, proves the pyramid stood entirely intact for well over 1,000 years. Furthermore, intrusive burials uncovered high within the surrounding debris pile reveal that the massive destruction of Meidum occurred suddenly between the 18th and 22nd dynasties. Sitting dangerously close to fertile cultivated farmlands, Meidum was treated as a highly accessible, free stone quarry for neighboring communities for centuries. This plunder was so relentless that it continued well into the 20th century, transforming the pyramid from a pristine monument into a stripped core from the top down. Ironically, this early wave of human thievery generated a massive shield of limestone chips that buried and preserved the bottom third of the casing stones. A close inspection of these buried blocks reveals a fascinating anomaly. A semicircular band of casing around the northern entrance remains completely smooth and undamaged. This proves that wind-blown sand dunes had protected the lower base for a millennium before the upper quarry debris spilled downward, keeping the corrosive, salt-laden chips from directly touching the pristine stone. The narrative shifts directly to the neighboring giants known as the Red Pyramid and the Bent Pyramid, where human looters are completely innocent of the primary destruction. Look closely at the Red Pyramid today, and you will notice a scattered, chaotic patchwork of remaining casing stones across random elevations. Human beings do not quarry monuments in a scattered random pattern. That would be the most difficult and dangerous way to harvest stone. The reality is that the Red Pyramid's casing blocks were remarkably shallow, making them highly vulnerable to an extreme environmental phenomenon known as destructive thermal expansion. As the fierce Egyptian sun bakes the limestone during the day, the outer layers expand drastically, only to contract rapidly during the freezing desert nights. Across millennia, this continuous thermal cycling literally snapped the shallow stones away from the core, causing them to detach and slide down to the desert floor entirely on their own. Once these blocks were shattered on the ground, local scavengers quickly carried them away for small-scale local building projects. This explains why almost all the fallen casing is gone, while the pyramid itself shows no signs of large-scale, systematic human plundering. The stones were not stolen from the monument. They were simply collected from the floor after the environment forcefully cast them out. While the shallow stones of the Red Pyramid detached quickly, the adjacent Bent Pyramid offers the absolute ultimate laboratory to study thermal expansion in real time. For decades, Egyptologists foolishly claimed that the Bent Pyramid retained its casing simply because the blocks were slightly inclined. This theory is fundamentally incorrect, as historical accounts prove that the completely stripped Red Pyramid also utilized inclined casing. The real reason the Bent Pyramid clung to its exterior longer is its exceptional structural depth, with blocks anchoring nearly 2 meters deep into the core. However, this monument is currently in a state of absolute extreme peril. Historic photographs from the 19th century compared to modern surveys reveal a staggering loss of well over 1,000 casing stones from the upper sections in just the last 100 years. This represents an average loss of one massive block every single month, a terrifying rate of destruction that mainstream academia is completely ignoring. The continuous thermal expansion forces the massive blocks outward toward the corners, causing them to bulge, crack, and violently shatter against one another. The enormous patches visible on the pyramid face are not evidence of careless ancient workmanship, as prominent scholars claim. They are localized repairs where the immense pressure of thermal movement caused the stone to fracture. Unless a massive specialized intervention is launched immediately, the Bent Pyramid will lose its remaining exterior entirely within our lifetime. The Giza plateau represents the most shocking and aggressive chapter of human plundering, where the 3 largest pyramids retained their pristine exteriors for thousands of years until 3 distinct campaigns of thievery wiped them out. The Great Pyramid of Khufu was completely smooth and intact until at least the mid-14th century, when a massive state-level campaign utilized heavy tackle and ropes to strip the white Tura limestone entirely up to the summit. Every single scrap, including broken fragments, was systematically hauled away to construct the immense Mosque Madrasa of Sultan Hassan in Cairo. But while Khufu's plundering is widely recognized, the fate of the Menkaure and Khafre pyramids has been buried under centuries of absolute academic guesswork. Recently, controversial and aborted projects attempted to reconstruct Menkaure's lower casing, with prominent scholars falsely claiming the scattered granite blocks had never been installed or finished in antiquity. Historical testimonies from European Renaissance travelers completely expose these modern claims as entirely false. In 1547, explorers documented that Menkaure's pyramid was flawlessly intact, clad up to half its height in a striking dark Ethiopian stone that appeared brand new. However, by 1639, Visitors noted that the dark stone was entirely missing, while the upper white limestone remained smooth. This narrows the massive theft of Menkaur's 4,000 granite casing blocks to a precise window between 1591 and 1611, leaving behind only the shattered, split remnants we see scattered on the floor today. The final and most rapid casing stone heist occurred between 1670 and 1678, a mere 350 years ago, forever altering Khafre's pyramid and leaving the Giza plateau in its current ruined state. For centuries, explorers marveled at Khafre's perfectly smooth exterior, which made ascending the structure absolutely impossible. Yet, by 1692, official documents recorded that the pyramid had been aggressively violated, leaving only the isolated casing cap at the very summit because the extreme height made extraction too dangerous. This massive, sudden plundering was likely an enormous state-level project ordered within the Ottoman Empire, possibly to rebuild major historical structures in Cairo. But right before this catastrophic theft occurred, a brilliant explorer named Jean de Thévenot sketched Khafre's pyramid in 1664, preserving an overlooked physical testimony that unlocks the ultimate secret of the Fourth Dynasty. His precise sketch illustrates that before humans stripped the monument, Khafre's upper sections suffered from the exact same pattern of thermal expansion damage seen on the bent pyramid today, featuring massive cracks and bulging stones in the western center. This structural failure taught the ancient Egyptians a profound lesson. A solid, tightly fitted masonry core causes the casing to suffocate and shatter under thermal heat. Consequently, later generations intentionally altered their designs, utilizing loose rubble cores that allowed the pyramids to breathe and expand without destroying their outer shells. The rough interiors of later pyramids were not a cheap shortcut. They were a brilliant engineering evolution designed to ensure the monuments would stand pristine forever.